Let's talk some sports, baby.
Taken by Iguodala. Iguodala to Curry. Back to Iguodala. Up for the layup. Oh, blocked by Jones.
And remember, make tomorrow better than today, and make today better than yesterday. And you know what we gonna do. We gonna holler at you until next time, baby.
All right, Jay, let's move on over to the NBA bubble, where the games are finally back. Last night was the season restart for the NBA, featuring the first two regular season games. Clippers-Lakers headlined the night, seeing LeBron and AD start the restart with a victory. The Lakers won 103-101, propelled by Anthony Davis's 34 points and LeBron's game management. They also got quality play from Kyle Kuzma and Dion Waiters. The Clippers saw Kawhi and PG-13 combine for 58 points, but they were without Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell's services, which kind of sunk them in the end there. The Lakers maintained their grip on first in the West, while the Clippers slipped back, and they now have Denver right in their rearview mirror. So, Jay, what do you take away from this game?
Well, I told you this last night. I wasn't going to make too big a deal out of this game, no matter which way it went. When you look at all the different variables that you have in this game, and when you look at the Clippers, you talk about no Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell. That's significant. You talk about sixth and seventh men. I mean, those are the guys that you think about, and they're significant in the Clippers' ability to close games. So we got to think about that. And then for the Lakers, you look at the backcourt issues that they could have. We know Rajon Rondo's out with the thumb injury. Avery Bradley opting out, so you're incorporating different pieces in the backcourt. So we have to pay attention to those things. So the result is not too big of a deal to me. I think it's definitely a positive that the Lakers end the season with a split after dropping the first two games of the season. But again, I don't think it's something to get too up in arms about, because if we're talking about Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell playing this game, I think it's very reasonable that we could have seen a different outcome. But as far as a major takeaway, let me go to LeBron James real quick. I think it's safe to say that was a pretty subpar performance he delivered last night. Did not shoot the ball well. He was deferential quite often, and that's fine. I got no problem with that. But the way he closed the game, I want to go to the way he closed the game. You think about what he did on the final offensive possession for the Lakers. Had a little bit of a running shot that it looked like he was waiting for the officials to bail him out on, but he pursued the basketball, gets the rebound, puts it in, and then on the final possession for the Clippers, he stays on his feet when Kawhi pump fakes, doesn't allow him to get off a shot, and then when Kawhi gives the ball up to Paul George, he switches out on Paul George and forces him into an almost impossible running three-pointer. The way he closed that game, offensively and defensively, is championship level stuff. It's nothing to be, and it's not like I'm surprised. I don't think any of us should be surprised by that. But that is about the most impressive way you can finish a basketball game. And again, by and large, he did not play a good game. But the finishing touch he put on the game was something I was extremely impressed with. And as far as the Lakers, how they played, this is the formula I think they should adopt throughout this restart and into the playoffs. I think they should lean on Anthony Davis heavily throughout the first three quarters. And then in the fourth, I think that's when LeBron should be more assertive. Because the one thing, as much as LeBron takes care of himself and takes care of his body, you don't want him to break down because of too much being put on his shoulders. And a lot's going to be put on his shoulders regardless. Him and AD, those are your two guys. We know there's a significant drop-off in terms of depth between the Lakers and Clippers. AD has to put – that performance AD gave us last night, he was excellent. Especially his aggressiveness getting to the free throw line. He's got to be that every night in a 7-game series between these two teams, particularly when Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell get back into action. So those two guys, we know what the formula is. AD has to me, when you talk about Kawhi and LeBron, they're going to cancel each other out in my estimation. The Anthony Davis, Paul George, the Robin to Batman matchup, AD has to win that. He has to win it soundly in my estimation. If he can't, then I think the Lakers are in big trouble in a 7-game series. But as far as the supporting cast for the Lakers, I think Kyle Kuzma hit some big shots for you. That's important. If you can get more of that from Kuzma and he turns into that consistent third scorer that we all thought at the regular season they were going to have, that could be a big deal as well. It could be a great asset to the Lakers. And when you look at what Dion Waiters did last night, I thought he was highly impressive for his first action. I didn't see a whole lot from J.R. Smith, but I think if one of those two guys in a series can give you something, that could be of great benefit to you. That could be of great benefit. The one thing I'm concerned about with the Lakers, and I didn't pay too much attention to it last night, but when LeBron is not on the floor, how do they initiate offense? Didn't pay too close attention to that last night. It did end up being a problem. You're able to secure this win, but I'm looking at that going forward. When LeBron's not on the floor, can they still run effective offense? As far as the Clippers, though, Kawhi seemed to be a little off early on in the game, but he ended up playing a fine game, his usual efficient numbers. Paul George, in my estimation, a little bit underwhelming, I think. Really something that hasn't been it's nothing new. He's been inconsistent all season, some of it due to injuries. So I'd like to see a little bit more from him. As far as the supporting cast, I take that back. Paul George had a great game. 30 points. I'm looking at it now. 30 points, 5 rebounds. Quite efficient. 11 for 17. So that's more of what we need. But the real culprit for the Clippers last night was a supporting cast. Remember when Marcus Morris was acquired? And we thought that may be the nail in the coffin for the Lakers. Marcus Morris, I don't know what he's doing or not doing in preparation for these games. You got one more time to come out there and throw up a donut. Wasn't it the last time these two teams matched up that he was about 0 for 9? And he was 0 for 4 last night. So you're going to have to – Marcus Morris is going to have to give me something or else. He can go ahead and sit down and let somebody else play. But he wasn't the only one that wasn't giving me nothing. Landry Shamet, he couldn't find his shot last night. Zubac can be effective, and he can be a problem. He's the one guy with serious size that can pose problems and be a presence rebounding the basketball. He was highly ineffective last night. That's not going to be good enough because you're going to need him in there to some degree to battle Anthony Davis at some point and take some of the pressure off Montrezl Harrell. It's going to be a tough task to ask Harrell to battle Anthony Davis every minute he's on the floor. And don't get me started with Joakim Noah. I don't know what that's about. That's not going to get it done. But all in all, I don't think it's a big concern for the Clippers that they lost. I did not think they played well for the better part of the game, but it was a one-possession game. It came down to the final shot. And oh, by the way, quick note to both games last night. What a treat that both games came down to a last-second shot. What a treat.
They both at times looked like they were about to come off the rails, and then both times the teams battled back, which was very cool to see. Yeah. I want to start off before we get to the game itself real quick. I want to say props to the NBA for the whole presentation. I don't know about you. I thought it was pretty well done, all things considered, right? You agree with that?
I would. I thought it was well played. I did as far as, no fans and all that, I didn't really pay that much attention to it. I thought it was well played and well set up. Great. To me, the NBA's done a great job.
Yeah, and this was we've used the term unprecedented about 10,000 times recently, but this was game time. You had to really make it look good, and the virtual fans and the way the sidelines were sort of spread out. The players had more room. You had the virtual fans. That was really cool, and I thought it was really. It felt like after a first quarter, you kind of forgot what you were watching. It just kind of seemed like a normal game, and they did a good job of sort of, I guess, using a little movie magic to kind of make you forget about it, which does take a lot to pull off. So big hat to them. And of course, you also had the platform they used last night. You had, the court with Black Lives Matter, and you had all the pregame stuff. And overall, that was really well done. The NBA really had to lean into the players and using the platform and not having that message go away. So they did a good job with that. I thought the jersey the jerseys were a bit much to me. I couldn't even read some of them. But other than that, hats off to them for that. in terms of overall, what we first saw from the basketball, I thought it was pretty sloppy. I thought, because you would expect these teams coming down the playoff stretch to be pretty close and be in top form. But obviously, they're not going to be with the time off. I thought the foul call seemed a little ticky-tack, but it was consistent, if nothing else, so that was good. So overall, it was maybe a bit better than I expected, but it was about, I think that's about what we expected to see, is just having that sort of sloppy, sort of like not almost like a preseason feel, if you will. But and overall, as far as the teams go, I think you saw both teams had some punches pulled still. The Lakers, again, they're still trying to figure out this new rotation. The Clippers are missing some pretty important contributors, especially Lou Williams being their sixth man. But both teams, they put big runs to the games, and they both flashed the idea of this is what we can be when we're at full power. The Clippers had a 26-5 run that put them up in the third quarter. Within the Lakers, they started smashing three-pointers, and they had a 36-14 run that pulled them right back into the game and ultimately got them over the edge. So you kind of saw those flashes of, man, when these teams are clicking, boy, they can be good. And for the Clippers, more specifically, you got to think, again, missing Montrezl Harrell and Lou Williams, that was probably the difference in this game, just like you said. They didn't get much from Morris or Shamet. And their advantage, their sort of trump card, is having that second unit matching up with your second units of teams like the Lakers that just aren't going to be as good. The depth is just what smothers teams after their 1-2 punch of Kawhi and PG-13. And that wasn't really there last night, Again, Kawhi and Paul George, like you said, they played well, but other than that, the second unit contribution wasn't that great. And yeah, Zubac was getting thrown around a lot against AD, which is something we've seen before. So trying to figure out how to slow him down in a 7-game series. So far, the Clippers don't appear to have that one figured out yet. For the Clippers, the biggest thing I saw was Anthony Davis getting to the foul line. You mentioned it already a little bit, but I think he was it 12 for 13? 16 from 17 from the stripe. And that's a big deal. I think that's bigger than people might think, because as we work through this bubble, fouls are probably going to be kind of tight. The refs are kind of anxious to get it right. And teams are playing shallower rosters. We have guys that have opted out, guys that are injured, guys that didn't make the trip. So teams don't have their full depth that they would normally have. And if Anthony Davis can get guys in foul trouble early by getting to the line, that can be a big deal in some of these games. That could outright decide a few games, I would even say. So, but overall, LeBron, I thought his performance was fine. It was a little off for him, just 16 points. But I thought it was a little bit on cruise control early besides those defensive possessions. He had a couple, not just the one at the end of the game. He had a couple where he really locked down on defense. That might be something we see, a more defensive, facilitating LeBron early, and then late game, he tries to take over on offense. That's something we definitely could see more of. Kyle Kuzma had a great night on both sides of the ball. You like to see him hitting threes, especially if Danny Green doesn't feel like hitting them like last night. So hopefully, if the Lakers can get a couple guys that can hit threes, they're going to be hard to beat. And they can get just a decent performance from a guy like Waiters, Kuzma, maybe JR. They're going to be in good shape. But overall, like you said, I'm not taking too much away from this game. We'll see in a couple weeks when the real series starts.
Yeah, and back to your point about Anthony Davis. As far as Lakers Clippers, the foul trouble to me won't be the problem for the Clippers because they got the depth. They can throw different people at him. Mm-hmm. But AD, not only being the number 2 option, he's got to win that matchup against Paul George, but he's got to win it more importantly because the Clippers don't have an answer for him.
Right.
You think about it. Zubac and Noah, they got size, but they don't have the athleticism nor the agility, the speed, all those different things. And then Montrezl Harrell, Marcus Morris, whoever else you want to try to throw at him, they're not big enough. So that's a huge quandary. And when he has smaller defenders on him, and even with Zubac, he's got to punish them at the basket. And that's what he did last night.